Who among the Imperium remembers the first question? Not the one spoken by mortal lips, but the one carried by the void long before mankind walked upright beneath Terra's newborn sun. It whispers still, across rusted stars and ravaged worlds, asking, what makes a warrior unbreakable? From that question rises a name, heavy like a cathedral made of bone. Titus. Before the galaxy drowned in its own blood, before the Astronomicon wavered like a dying flame, the echoes of his defiance carved themselves into the annals of war. This chronicle is not written in ink, but in ceramite cracked beneath demon claws. In the roar of bolters that spoke like thunderous scripture, in the silence after a god is slain. And now, as the archive awakens after 10 millennia of dust and forgetting, the tale begins again. He was born not from peace, but from conflict sharpened like obsidian. A space marine of Ultramar, forged in gene-wrought perfection, his purpose was simple: hold the Imperium's line or die upon it. Yet something within Titus stood apart from the countless sons of Guilliman. Not pride, not fury, conviction. A conviction like adamant that would one day put him at odds with gods and monsters alike. When the orcs came like a green tidal apocalypse, when the warp tore like flayed hide, Titus did not falter. He stood upon the battlements of Graia, storm clouds burning red overhead, and muttered oaths that sounded like prophecy. War, like a hungry god, devours memory. Planets crumble into corpse dust beneath its jaws. But Titus refused to be forgotten. His deeds became scripture on 1,000 shattered worlds. They said he weathered demon fire with bloodied armor and eyes like smoldering stars. They said he strode through battle as if death itself were merely another obstacle to crush beneath his heel. Many Marines are mighty, many endure. But Titus resisted. Chaos seeped into his veins like a whisper and found no purchase. He defied the warp not with purity, but with will. With defiance that echoed like a war horn across eternity. And for that, they feared him. The Inquisition arrived silent as a guillotine. Aboard a ship lit only by dying lumen strips, Titus faced judgment not from beasts or heretics, but from the very empire he bled for. Accusation hung like a noose. Exposure to the warp meant corruption, mutation, damnation. Yet Titus felt no tremor of doubt. He stared into the eyes of those who called themselves truth, and the truth they found staring back unsettled them. His soul was tempered steel, no fracture, no yielding. If the warp had touched him, then its claws found themselves broken on the anvil of his will. Still, the Imperium does not forgive what it cannot classify. Years passed in obscurity, like a wound the Empire chose not to stitch. Some say he wandered the fringes of Imperial space, a ghost among battlefields where only the dead kept him company. Others claim he was sent into secret war, a blade sheathed only when the foe was unknowable and unspeakable. Wherever he walked, planets felt the tremor. Wherever he fought, legends rooted themselves in scorched soil. He did not bend. He did not break. Even stripped of rank, he carried the Emperor's name like a burning standard. And then, the galaxy changed. The Great Rift split the firmament like a wound in reality. Demons poured through like molten hate, worlds screamed, the Imperium staggered. Entire sectors vanished into the screaming dark. In that age of terror, when hope rotted like flesh in the sun, a shadow returned, a warrior moving like a storm through firestorms. Some swore they saw Titus at the front lines of Cadia's dying, shoulder to shoulder with Cadian ghosts as the planet burned. Others claimed he battled tyrannid tendrils across the galactic east, bolter in one hand, chainsword in the other, roaring the Emperor's name into the void. None could confirm. All could feel the echo. Then at last, proof emerged. On a forsaken war zone where the sky bled warp light, Titus strode once more beneath ultramarine heraldry, but no longer as a mere captain. His form towered, Primaris forged, reborn through Guilliman's triumphant return. Some whispered that this was redemption, others that the Imperium merely reforged a weapon too valuable to discard. Titus himself spoke little. His silence carried the weight of galaxies. His eyes held storms that never ceased. His brothers saw not a hero, but a question incarnate. What does it mean to stand unbroken? The war for Bastion Secundus was where the answer began to take shape like a blade in fire. Across a continent drowned in trenches and demon vomit, Titus led the charge. His voice was thunder in vox channels, steady as cathedral stone. Cultists shattered like glass beneath disciplined volleys. Demons howled, only to be cut down by a sword that sang like a morning bell. Titus fought as if he sought something beyond victory, as if in each fallen foe he burned away a fragment of doubt left from his trial. And in the inferno, his men followed with fanatic devotion, not out of duty, out of belief. But belief has a cost. During the siege of the Column of Saints, a monolith of screaming marble, Titus faced a creature older than memory. A demon prince, wings like flayed banners, eyes like black suns, voice dripping corruption. It spoke of his past, of the Inquisition's suspicion, of the taint that never quite washed away. It laughed that he was reforged only to serve again, a weapon chained. Titus stood unmoved. The ground split beneath them, rubble floating in the warp's breath, and his sword answered not with hatred, but with certainty. Steel met claw, light met shadow. A duel carved into fate's throat. And when the beast fell, it did not curse him, it smiled. After the victory, whispers followed Titus like carrion birds. Some said he fought too fiercely, as if challenging destiny itself. Some claimed they saw warp fire in his blows, a shimmer like forbidden light. Others insisted they saw wings, ephemeral, spectral, unfurl for a heartbeat during his final strike. No one dared speak it aloud. To question such a hero was treason of spirit and soul. Yet the rumor wormed through the ranks, unstoppable as time. Titus remained silent. There came a night beneath a starless sky when Titus stood alone among the dead, helm removed, gauntlets blood slick, breath misting like incense. A lone serf, trembling like a failing candle, approached him to ask the question burning through every mortal mind. "What are you now, my lord?" Titus turned his gaze, and something ancient stirred behind his eyes. Not corruption, not heresy, but a possibility that made reality itself shudder. He answered only this: a warrior who refuses to break. But the stars above flickered, as if something listening did not agree. And far across the void, unseen and waiting, something whispered his true name. The chronicle falls silent. The final echo of that whisper had not yet died when the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Titus stood beneath the corpse light of distant suns, his name, the true name heard only by the void, lingering like a forbidden's taste. Across the width of the Imperium, psychers woke screaming from dreams they could not remember, their minds scorched by visions of a warrior wreathed in blinding radiance and shadow intertwined. In shrines where incense burned like the tears of martyrs, statues cracked. Prayers faltered. Something ancient had been acknowledged, if only for a heartbeat. The Emperor's tarot lay scattered in the vaults of the Adeptus Astrotelepathica, cards falling into patterns no seer dared interpret. A warrior who refuses to break. But what if refusal was itself a rebellion? Hope and heresy so often share the same throne. While Titus marched, the galaxy whispered of him like a half-remembered god. On Bastion Secundus, where trenches drowned in rust-red rain, soldiers carved his sigil into their armor, not as order, but as faith. Some prayed to him beside the Aquila. Others prayed instead of it. Chaplains noticed. The ecclesiarchy frowned, but none moved to intervene, not yet. War demanded heroes, even dangerous ones. Yet deep within the cathedrals of Terra, hushed debates began like knives sliding quietly from sheaths. What becomes of an Imperium whose hearts beat for a man rather than the master of mankind? Faith, they knew, was combustible. In the right wind, it could wreathe the stars. Titus himself remained silent as the crypts of Gilliman. But silence speaks. In the mess halls of Imperial Guard, in Manufactoria lit by dying servitors, men and women swore they felt calm when his name was spoken. Calm in a universe that knew none. They clung to it the way drowning souls cling to driftwood. Yet calm is dangerous. It invites thought, reflection, and reflection births doubt. If Titus could resist the warp, if he could stand unshaken where saints fell, then what of the Emperor's divine necessity? What of weakness disguised as destiny? Seeds of rebellion sprouted beneath armor and prayer books. And as belief cracked, so too did the veil between worlds. On the night of the Red Tithe, Titus dreamed, though Astartes do not dream. He walked through a battlefield where history itself lay slain. Thousands of broken banners fluttered like the wings of dead angels. A voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere, neither demon nor god, but the sound of inevitable futures. "You are the fulcrum," it murmured. "The Imperium shall stand or fall upon the hinge of your defiance." Titus reached for his bolter, but his hands held nothing, not even flesh. He was unbound by armor, unbound by rank. He was only truth. And truth is terrifying. He awoke with a blade at his throat. Brother Sergeant Varun, helm removed, eyes drowning in zealotry and fear, whispered tremulously, "My lord, forgive me. I must know you are still loyal." Titus did not flinch. He merely regarded the man as one might regard a child holding a nuclear charge. "Loyalty," Titus murmured, "is a word often shaped by the fearful." Varun trembled. The blade lowered. Yet something intangible had shifted. Trust tasted uncertain, brittle like old parchment. Others watched. Others wondered. If even the faithful doubted, what then of the ambitious? The Inquisition would not ignore this tremor much longer. And indeed, they had already begun to move. Far away, aboard a black ship whose hull drank starlight like sacrament, Inquisitor Livius Halle knelt over a data slate bearing Titus' name. His agents had gathered whispers like insects drawn to blood. Reports of miracles. Reports of disobedience. Reports of soldiers invoking Titus over the Emperor's own title. Hale's expression was carved stone. Neither wrath nor mercy, only purpose. A symbol unapproved, he concluded to the silent chamber. A hero born outside sanctioned myth, unacceptable. With a single motion, he sealed a writ of retrieval. Titus was to be summoned, or seized, or erased. But legends do not kneel easily. Meanwhile, on Bastion Secundus, some of Titus' brothers met in shadows where chaplains could not hear. They spoke softly, voices thick with reverence and fear. "If the Inquisition comes for him," one said, "we must decide whether we stand aside or stand with him." A silence heavier than armor followed. Loyalty to the Emperor warred with loyalty to the man who had saved them countless times. One Marine whispered the unthinkable, "If Titus is marked a heretic, then perhaps heresy is not always wrong." No one replied, but no one rebuked him. The galaxy shifted another fraction toward the abyss. Titus felt the weight of invisible chains tightening. He walked through the camps where wounded guardsmen lay like broken offerings to war. One girl, barely more than a child, reached for him with trembling fingers. "Are you truly unbreakable?" she asked, voice thin as dying light. Titus paused. For a heartbeat he seemed immeasurable, a god carved from resolve, a myth wearing mortal armor. Then he answered softly, "I do not break. I endure." The girl smiled, not with hope, but with worship. The inquisitorial gunships descended within the hour. Stormtroopers poured like iron rain. The silver rosette gleamed like a blade of judgment. Inquisitor Halle stepped forward, voice amplified across voxcasters. "Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, you stand accused of fostering unsanctioned veneration, deviation of faith, and potential warp anomaly. You will submit for examination." The camp froze. Bolters tightened in fists. Hearts hammered like war drums. Titus raised his helm, face a calm storm. "And if I do not?" The Inquisitor's reply was deathly soft. "Then we test what breaks." In that moment, Before battle, before choice, the sky above split with a sound like reality screaming. Warp light rained like black snow. A figure stepped through the tier, wreathed in radiance neither holy nor damned, bearing the same face as Titus, but older, luminous, wrong. And the soldiers realized with dawning horror, there were two of him. No one breathed. The two figures stood mirrored beneath a burning sky, one forged in living flesh, the other woven from raw radiance and memory, a reflection, a prophecy, or a lie given form. The original Titus, grim, grounded, forged in battle, reached instinctively for his blade. The other merely watched, eyes like nebulae collapsing in slow ruin. Warp wind coiled around him, tasting reality, testing it. Guardsmen fell to their knees not in worship, but in primal terror. They knew instinctively that one of these beings was no longer merely a man. Faith, already cracking, split further. Belief became a battlefield. Inquisitor Holly felt dread coil in his gut, not the fear of death, but of truth. For a moment he saw something reflected in the second Titus gaze, a cathedral of stars, a burning cradle, a legion kneeling in worship of a figure both divine and monstrous. He tore his eyes away, gasping. "In the Emperor's name," he rasped. "Identify yourself." The luminous Titus smiled, a gesture too ancient to be kind. "I am what was suppressed," he said. "What you were never permitted to remember." Stormtroopers opened fire. Reality convulsed. Bolter rounds flattened mid-air, reduced to motes of light. The spectral Titus stepped forward, untouched, unreal. The original Titus charged with a roar like a dying sun's collapse, chainblade screaming. When their weapons met, the world shattered like glass. The shockwave hurled tanks aside, cracked the ground into yawning chasms. Screams became dust on the wind. Guardsmen prayed as they died. Astartes, unyielding giants of war, staggered beneath forces no physics acknowledged. The clash lasted mere seconds, and yet it carved centuries into the minds of those who lived to see it. Then the two were gone, vanished like a myth swallowed by the void. Afterward, only silence, thick and choking. The battlefield lay strewn with broken faith. Chaplains wandered the carnage, whispering litanies that felt hollow even as they spoke them. Some Marines wept, not from pain, but from uncertainty. If Titus was more than mortal, if another Titus existed, then what did loyalty mean? A guardsman, bleeding out beside a ruined chimera, repeated one phrase until breath failed him. Which one was ours? No answer came. War did not wait for clarity. Within days, entire regiments vanished into the warp storm brewing above Bastion Secundus. Inquisitorial fleets withdrew, then returned with fire and chains, unsure whether to purge or to protect what remained. Rumors flooded like plague through the Imperium, whispers of a Primarch reborn, or a false god wearing ultramarine colors. Some worlds declared Titus a saint. Others condemned him as Alpha Legion treachery incarnate. Every interpretation was a weapon. Every belief a spark against reality's fraying fabric. And still, no word from Titus. The warp shimmered across the galaxy like an open wound, and psychers collapsed with visions of twin shadows marching across eternity. One cast by man, one cast by something more. In lonely chapels and shattered trenches, priests trembled at the altar. They felt the Emperor's light flicker not with weakness, but with hesitation, as if he himself was uncertain of the path unraveling before mankind. A single question echoed across prayer halls like doom made sound. What if the Emperor knew and hid it? In Inquisitor Hale's private sanctum, the truth surfaced like a corpse rising in stagnant water. A sealed archive, databank sealed for 10,000 years, opened at his touch. Inside, forbidden records of a project older than the heresy itself, the Primarch Genome Echo Initiative, a proto-Primarist design. An experiment not to create suns, but to create mirrors, warriors reflecting potential futures. Titus had been one of them. And the second, the destiny he was meant to become or to destroy. Realization broke Hale's composure like glass. Meanwhile, drifting in a void between moments and matter, Titus stood face to face with his radiant twin. Around them were no stars, only a sea of memory and unmade possibility. The luminous figure spoke softly, like a father addressing a wayward child. "We were one," it said. "A soul split, potential fragmented. You chose mortality. I chose ascension." Titus clenched his fists, voice thick with defiant sorrow. "I chose humanity." The luminous one replied with grief that tasted like knives. "And humanity is dying." They reached for each other, not to embrace, but to decide what would define existence. Across the warp sea, a sound like the cracking of heaven itself rang out. Reality groaned. A choice was made, though none could yet say which one. Only one being emerged from the breach, armor scorched, eyes like dying suns drowning in infinite memory. Marines fell to their knees. Inquisitors tightened their grips on fate. Priests forgot how to pray. The warriors spoke a single phrase, voice layered with two souls, or perhaps none. "I remember everything." And in that whisper, the stars changed. The whisper "I remember everything" echoed through the warp like a tolling bell, heard not with ears, but with soul. The being that stepped from the breach wore the armor of Titus, but moved with a gravity older than the Imperium itself, a presence forged from memory, guilt, potential, and the terrible clarity of one who has seen beyond the veil. On Bastion Secundus, warriors who beheld him felt both hope and dread coil in equal measure. Some recognized the man who had saved them. Others saw a stranger, vast and unknowable. The question that had haunted the galaxy now stood embodied. Was this Titus ascended, or Titus corrupted? No answer came, only the hush of a world waiting for judgment. Those who survived the first encounter spoke of the silent hours that followed, hours thick with thought, fear, and prayer spoken not aloud, but inside aching hearts. The inquisitorial forces regrouped, predator ships circling the battlefield like vultures waiting for weakness. Hale himself stood before the returned warrior, hands trembling despite will wrought from iron. "If you are Titus," he whispered, "then speak as he would speak." A long silence followed, one that felt like the pause between lightning and thunder, between sin and absolution. At last, Titus spoke, neither denial nor confession, but a lament. "I have walked paths you are not meant to follow. I have seen what your faith keeps hidden." The sentence broke something in Hale, a man who had built his life on certainty, on the righteous architecture of sanctioned truth. Doubt bloomed in him like a cancer. Every scripture he had memorized, every execution he had justified, every heretic he had burned, all weighed different now. Faith, once granite, now felt like ash cupped in shaking hands. For what is loyalty when truth shifts beneath one's feet? What is righteousness when the Emperor himself is silent? Hale looked upon Titus and saw not salvation or damnation, but choice, and choice terrified him more than any demon. Battle erupted elsewhere without warning, as sudden as heart failure. A warp rift tore open above Bastion Secundus, disgorging nightmares in the shape of children and kings. Crimson horrors fell like angels burning, shrieking hymns of uncreation. Loyalists and renegades alike lifted bolters, not caring who stood beside them. Survival outranked ideology. Titus moved through the carnage like a storm given purpose. Each strike of his blade was a prayer inverted, a petition of steel to a god who may or may not be watching. His warriors followed, not because they understood, but because he did not break. Even inquisitorial troops found themselves fighting at his side, driven by instinct older than doctrine. Amid the chaos, a lone guardsman recorded a message with shaking hands, a confession spoken beneath the roar of battle. "If we live," he said, staring into ash-filled sky, "it won't be because the Emperor saved us. It will be because Titus did." I don't know what that means anymore. He closed his eyes, fired his last magazine into the dark, and died before he finished weeping. His vox log later spread across a dozen worlds like wildfire. A prayer or a heresy. Sometimes they are the same. Another silence followed, short, trembling, like a dying breath held too long. The warp closed. The world steadied. Smoke drifted like funeral veils across ruined trenches. Inquisitor Holly approached Titus again, more slowly than before, as one might approach a shrine or a loaded weapon. "Tell me," he said, voice raw, "what did you remember?" Titus looked to the heavens, where the stars guttered like candles in deep catacombs. "I remembered what the Emperor feared," he answered. "Not chaos, not the gods, us." The words spread like plague. Across the Imperium, belief fractured. Some worlds declared Titus the true heir to mankind's future, a warrior unbound by divinity, proof that mortals could transcend gods. Other worlds burned every mention of his name, declaring him a blasphemy that threatened humanity's last foundation. Civil wars erupted over sermons. Armies marched over poems. A single sentence had become a weapon sharper than any relic blade, and every soul that heard it bled differently. The galaxy reshaped itself not by decree, but by interpretation. Yet for all his power, Titus himself grew quieter, burdened by cosmic remembrance like a titan bearing a broken planet. In private he knelt, not to pray, but to grieve. He did not weep, Astartes do not, but something in him shuddered like a dying star. Memory was not a gift, it was a crucifix. He saw humanity as the Emperor had seen it, not children, not soldiers, but a storm waiting to break its chains. And he feared what freedom might demand. On a night without moon or warp light, Titus gathered his brothers, those still unbroken in loyalty or love. His voice was soft, a confession carried by wind across graves. "I know what must come," he said. "I know what we must face." None asked what. They felt it, like fate inhaling, like the galaxy leaning forward to listen. Holly, drawn by obligation or destiny, approached with the Inquisition at his back. Bolters rose. Doctrines clashed in the space between heartbeats. The sky answered before men could. A shadow eclipsed the stars, a colossal silhouette descending like judgment incarnate. A vessel older than the Imperium, bearing markings from a time erased, engines burning with both plasma and sorrow. Vox networks across the sector died in static as a single transmission burned through all channels. Cold and precise, "We have come for the one who remembers." And every soul, warrior, priest, traitor, saint, understood with terrible clarity. They came not to kill Titus, they came to claim him. No one spoke as the ancient vessel descended, its shadow swallowing the battlefield like a last judgment. Its hull bore symbols older than Terra's first wars, sigils that should not exist, that scholars would have killed to deny. Thunder rolled without sound. Light bent around the ship as if afraid to touch it. Titus stood unmoving at its arrival, as though he had always known this hour would come. Perhaps he had, now that memory was no longer mercy but curse. Inquisitor Hale felt his knees weaken beneath the weight of revelation. This was not chaos, not Xenos. This was imperial, yet impossibly archaic, an echo from the dawn of gene forging. Its doors unfurled like petals of rusted iron. Cloaked figures emerged, their armor etched with the same sigil Titus had worn since before he understood its meaning. They moved not with menace, but with inevitability. "Brother," the foremost intoned, voice like stone grinding across eons, "we are the Echo Legion. Born of the lost genome, you were never one, but two halves of the same design. We have returned to complete what was severed." Titus' breath trembled, the first crack in a will that once defied gods. Marines around him froze, torn between instinct and awe. Hale raised his rosette with desperate authority, but the cloaked warriors ignored it as one ignores a candle in the path of a star. They bowed to Titus or to the memory behind his eyes. The universe felt suddenly small, a cage of its own making. Then the sky split again. A warped tear like a screaming wound vomited abominations of fire and shadow. Demons surged, drawn by the scent of choice, by the weight of destiny ready to break. The battlefield erupted into horror. Steel met claw, faith met void. The Echo Legion advanced, serene and unstoppable, carving through Neverborn as if through memory itself. Titus roared into the fray, each strike thunderous, divine, grieving. Halle fought beside him, not as inquisitor, but as man. Whatever truth Titus carried, it was humanity's now. A guardswoman, the last of her squad, knelt in mud and blood, whispering the litanies of light, though her voice was little more than shrapnel and hope. When a demon's blade found her, she smiled through crimson teeth. "If we fall," she breathed, "let him stand." She died before her prayer reached dawn. Titus fought like a legion alone, though his face was streaked with pain no armor could hide. Every kill, every broken demon was a reminder of the other half, the radiant twin now absent or hidden within him. Echo legionaries encircled him in formation older than language. Together they carved a path toward the vessel's waiting hold, its interior glowing like the womb of forgotten gods. Halle reached him, armor cracked, soul bleeding questions that would never have answers. "If you go," he rasped, "what becomes of us?" Titus paused, helmet under one arm, eyes ancient with unbearable clarity. "You live," he said, "not by faith, but by will." Then he stepped into the ship. The ramp began to rise. Marines screamed his name. Guardsmen surged forward as if to hold the sky itself down. Some prayed he would stay. Some begged him to leave. None were ready. The vessel trembled, engines igniting with a sound like dying stars being reborn. Halle pressed a hand to the metal as it closed, a gesture of farewell or accusation, neither defined. The Echo Legion's chant rumbled like tectonic plates shifting beneath the soul. Two were made. One remains unfinished. Completion demands cost. The ship lifted through smoke and ruin, vanishing into the torn sky like a question swallowed by eternity. And then, silence. Wars ceased without victory, faith without anchor. Worlds paused, breath held, waiting for meaning to return. Rumors spread like spores. Titus had ascended. Titus had been taken. Titus would come again as something greater than Primarch, smaller than God. Halle watched the empty heavens, eyes hollowed by revelation. In his hand he held something impossible, a gene-forged seal that had been pressed into his palm in the final second, unseen by all but him. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Centuries old, yet still warm. He realized with dawning terror it was growing. The seal opened like an eye. Somewhere in the void, a second voice awoke. The world lies hushed beneath the weight of what has passed. In the aftermath of shattered prophecy, the ruins of the great cathedral sprawl like the ribs of a dead leviathan across the plains of Thystra Tertius. Marble once radiant is scorched, truth carved away by fire and betrayal. A lone sister kneels in the nave where the high cannon's blood still stains the altar, her voice a whisper lost to broken vaults. Her faith is a flickering ember struggling against the void. She remembers the Emperor's light not as a sun, but as a distant star, faint, uncertain, beautiful for its failing. She prays not for salvation, but for understanding, knowing neither will ever come. Her tears fall like meteors across a dying night. Across the plains, the dead do not rest. Their armor gleams dully beneath a sky torn by warplight, a silent legion of steel and regret. Once they marched with purpose. Now they lie motionless as monuments to a war that no longer remembers them. A single banner snaps in a faltering wind, a tattered relic of an oath sworn and broken. A battle servo hovers overhead, vox emitters sputtering fragments of hymns that no throat lives to finish. It is a requiem sung by machines to bones, a final rite for ghosts that never knew peace. In the distance, thunder rolls like the last heartbeat of a god. In the shattered archives beneath the palace, scrolls smolder like memories half forgotten. Scribes pick through the ashes with gloved hands, searching for truths that once guided worlds. They find only fragments, A half-verse of litany, a sigil scorched beyond translation, a record of devotion turned heresy. One archivist weeps quietly as she reads a passage that claims the emperor once walked among mortals without a crown, without a throne. If true, everything was built on illusion. Yet she clings to the possibility that even illusion can be sacred. Faith, she thinks, is sometimes a lie we choose to keep breathing. Above, the sky splits in radiant fracture. A choir of psychers stands atop the citadel spire, eyes rolled white, voices shaking with strain. They attempt to stitch reality closed, to cage the warp that pours like bleeding light upon the world. Their flesh burns with each note of the hymn. Their souls stretch thin as discipline frays. One falters, screaming, radiant, aflame, yet the others continue, bound by duty that demands more than life can give. When at last the rift wanes to a smoldering scar across the heavens, the spire stands silent. The choir remains unmoving, statues carved of ash and sacrifice. Alone Astartes limps across the remains of the battlefield, helm removed so the dying wind may touch his scarred face. He has outlived his brothers, his enemies, even the war that forged him. He hears echoes in every footfall, laughter once shared, orders once spoken like thunder. Now there is only the quiet, the dreadful quiet where purpose once stood. In his gauntlet he carries a cracked aquila, its wings broken as his certainty. He lays it upon a stone and whispers an oath no one remains to witness. War made him eternal. Peace makes him obsolete. In the vault of penance, the traitor priest still kneels, chains of ceramite binding his withered limbs. He recites the 10,000 regrets, a confession carved from agony and revelation. He speaks of visions where the emperor wept not in victory, but in sorrow for what humanity became. He claims the truth was never purity, but choice, never domination, but endurance. The inquisitors who listen tremble, for his words worm roots into doubt. They seal the chamber, yet his voice continues through their dreams. Heresy bleeds like ink through parchment. A child born in the rubble holds a candle to the darkness. She has never known the Imperium whole, only fragments, only ashes, only stories whispered like lullabies of golden worlds that may never have been real. Her mother teaches her the creed with shaking voice, though she no longer believes it herself. Yet when the child prays, it is with wonder, not fear. Perhaps faith renewed is not like the old, not iron-bound, not absolute, but fragile and therefore precious. On distant Luna Cirrus, statues of primarchs stand half-drowned in rising sands. Pilgrims journey across deserts of bone dust to lay offerings of rusted shells and burnt prayer scrolls. They do not seek miracles, only remembrance. In their eyes burns a quiet defiance. If gods abandon us, we will remember ourselves. A prophet speaks beneath their stone gaze, claiming a new age is rising from the ruin, not of conquest, but of survival. They call her mad, but listen anyway. The black ship returns, hull scarred by warp fire. It carries survivors whose eyes hold galaxies of terror. Some laugh brokenly, others scream through stitched lips. Among them walks a psyker child whose gaze sees the future like a wound. She whispers of wings broken and reforged, of an empire rebuilt not on obedience but grief. They fear her, they protect her. They do not know which is mercy. Far in the void, a fleet drifts aimlessly, crew long dead, engine silent. Yet its astropathic beacon pulses with a single phrase, repeating across centuries, "We saw him." The message drives scholars mad and saints to their knees. Was it salvation or another lie? The Imperium fractures anew around the question, devotion turning blade against devotion. Beneath a dead sun, the final survivors gather in the ruins of the world where prophecy died. They share bread, scars, and memories. No banners fly, no anthems thunder. Only quiet breaths of those who lived when gods fell. They wonder what becomes of loyalty when there is no one left to command it. What becomes of faith when truth is ash? The answer does not come. And in the last moment, as night devours the horizon, A second sun flickers into being, faint, trembling, newborn. Its light falls on shattered armor and kneeling warriors like a blessing or a warning. None can tell which. If you have walked beside this sorrowed tale, like, subscribe, share, and let your words join the ashes below.